Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I figured it's about my time to do my walk away story. And like most, I'm going to start at the beginning, right? So I'm from Detroit, and the D in Detroit stands for Democrat. Growing up, had no interest in politics, really. I did as a teenager later on and a young adult, but I never voted until Barack Obama came on the scene. And when I was growing up, I always, had this feeling or, this, I was, the man was out to get me. That's just how I'm going to say we were raised in Detroit. But then Obama happened. And man, I can't tell you, I mean, in all seriousness, I was so proud of this country. I was so proud that my fellow Americans were like, you know what, this dude, he's good. We're going to vote for him. He sounds good, he's articulate, he's statesmanly. We're going to vote for this guy and put all this, racism stuff to rest. So, yeah, I was really proud. But I got to tell you, I wasn't always proud to be an American. And I lived in Japan as a student and as a teacher for about 6 years. And it was during that time where I kind of had a thought. And that thought was, my worst day in Japan has been better than my best day in America. And I was like, why is that? And that question basically haunted me, still does. But I have an answer at the end of this. So eventually I returned to America to go to law school. And some, but not all, of my white peers looked at me as if I had just climbed Mount Everest. Like, how did you make it to law school? They looked at me as if I was a victim, like a victim of society. You're not supposed to go far in society. The standards for me were so low that doing something people have been doing forever just was like miraculous. Now, I'm saying to some, not all. And to strangers who didn't know me, I looked like a threat. Now, this led me to asking why my identity seemed to primarily be that of a victim or a threat in America and not in Japan. Well, at the time, the obvious answer was, say it with me, racism, right? But let's go back to 2008. And I'm sitting in a bar with my boys on election night, and Obama wins. I start crying, literally crying, tears. Again, I'm so proud of America. Maybe, I'm thinking to myself, maybe now I can stop saying my worst day in Japan is better than my best day in America. But that never happened. 2012 happened, and racism seemed to be getting worse. I found myself saying it more and more. My worst day in Japan is better than my best day in America. So since returning to Japan permanently wasn't an option, I decided as a Democrat, I wanted to stamp out racism everywhere. So I was very conscious of what was going on. The Zimmerman case, Michael Brown, I'm writing on Quora, blah, blah, blah. Then 2016 happened. And although Hillary was a bad candidate by any standard, right? The media who used to love Trump, right? Used to love Trump, was now presenting lots of circumstantial evidence that Trump was a racist, misogynist, transphobic, etc., etc. Well, I ain't voting for him. Hillary might be bad, but hey, I ain't voting for no racist. Nope. So in 2016, yes, I did vote for Hillary Clinton. Hey, I just rolled the dice. She got to be better than a racist, right? So, but something stuck with me that Trump said when he was in Detroit, when he was running for president. He said, hey, vote for me. What do you have to lose? And, you know, I got indignant. What do you mean? What do we have to lose? Man, this racist. What are you talking about? Man, up in Detroit saying that? It's just, he's actually in Detroit saying this. So I started listening to his policies and you know, honestly, I couldn't find fault with any of them. I mean, I'm not saying I did a deep dive into the policies, but it wasn't anything blaring like, you know, we're going to bring back the Klan, you know. But the legacy media and myself found fault with his personality. Well, he's not presidential. A president should be like Obama or Bush or Kennedy or somebody, not this guy, right? So then I thought, hey, you know what? I never thought about Obama's policies, never even questioned them. And then it dawned on me that probably like you, I just loved Obama. I mean, as a person, not the president had no clue. Just, I mean, the dude was cool. He was smooth as a fresh bar Skippy. He could play basketball. He could recite rap lyrics, all that. Never considered his policies, ever, during his presidency, right? Just do your thing, bro. Just do your thing. That was my attitude, right? I mean, he's black. He can't be racist, right? So we're going to fast forward to 2017. Then I saw this Vice documentary on Hidden Figures, the movie about the black women who helped NASA get the men to the moon or space. And the woman they were interviewing was one of the women in the movie, Kathleen Johnson. And the guy who interviewed her, the black guy with the high top fade, he was like, hey, so, you know, how was it? I'm paraphrasing this, but how was it for you to have to go run to the bathroom and then come back and always be late and get scolded for being late? And she was like, hey, that never happened. He was like, what? No, that never. And she was like, no, that never happened. I just used the bathroom right outside the door. And so then the dude with the high top fade interviewed the director, and he was like, well, why'd you put that scene in there? Why'd you put the scene where Kevin Costner kind of comes to the rescue, takes down the colored only sign off the bathroom? It was like, we're all going to use whatever bathroom we want. And he was like, well, for kind of dramatic effect or whatever. And I'm not sure if the guy with the high top fade said this, but I definitely said it. I was like, why would you take that moment of power away from this black woman? That was a powerful moment. She used her agency to say, look, I don't care what these rules say. I'm doing this, right? You gave that to someone who didn't need any power, this white guy, right? So that kind of disturbed me a bit, to a point where I was like, why are they altering this? And what else have they been altering, right? So I started thinking about things that I had researched in law school, things that in retrospect should be common knowledge, honestly. Things like in the Dred Scott case, where I learned that blacks in the 13 colonies, and in 5 of those colonies, blacks who qualified to vote, which basically means you own land and were a male, and sometimes had to be a Christian, you could vote. So in 5 colonies, blacks voted to ratify the Constitution. Now, this is in a court case, Dred Scott, right? I mean, we learn about Dred Scott in Black history every year, right? And then Plessy v. Ferguson. Well, the reason Plessy brought the suit was because he claimed that the train company was infringing on his property right as a white person. I never heard of that during Black History Month. I just heard that, separate but equal, blah, blah. Was that the school? Anyway, that wasn't the reason they presented. Now, the reason they presented for the case was legitimate. They just chose not to present his real reason for going to court. And I'm like, well, why hide that? I mean, it's just the truth. Then you got millions of European whites subjected to white Christian slavery by Northern Africans over decades, if not hundreds of years. Then you have our Navy, our naval fight song, "To the Shores of Tripoli," right? Well, our young Navy at the time was going to Tripoli to rescue some white slaves. Why are we hiding this? And especially since we have a Black History Month and it's all about slavery, and I call it the Black Victimization Month now. But if you're gonna talk about slavery, how come you're not talking about how Africans sold Africans to Europeans? So there's not one person of African descent in America who ended up in America before being enslaved by another African. I hope you followed that. So Africans sold Africans into slavery or captured them as slaves, then sold them to Europeans, right? Leave this stuff out. It's just the truth. So then I took a deep dive into history. I started reading books during the historical period of the time. So if I'm reading about Civil War, I'm reading books in the 1800s. And let me tell you, the Democratic Party has been socialist leaning ever since its inception in 1832. So with that, I start, as I'm reading these historical books, I'm starting to read Thomas Sowell and listening to personalities on YouTube and starting to understand the values of capitalism, not crony capitalism. So, but I'm still not supporting Trump. Nope, not doing it. So I came across this conversation where the Democratic president, Andrew Johnson, the one who became president after the Republican President Lincoln was assassinated. Well, he and the Postmaster General were having a conversation, and they concluded that, well, we can't run on slavery anymore because slavery's been outlawed. So the key to politics going forward is race. Ah, really? Okay. But I hear the people out there, the party's changed. It's not the party of Jim Crow anymore. We've changed. Well, Denise DeSouza and I don't know how many more people have debunked that. And you can just go on Google right now and debunk. I mean, come on, man. Out of all those Democrats, only one switched to the Republican Party. And he was Storm Thurmond, right? He was like the biggest bigot of all time. Like he won the Bigot of the Year award, I believe. So come on, man. That's been debunked. So I had to start thinking, well, Black folks been voting for Democrats since forever, right? I mean, since basically Woodrow Wilson kicked W.E.B. Du Bois out of the White House in the early 1900s. So what about the Democrats had us voting for them? So I started thinking about Democratic policies. Off the top of my head, I couldn't think of one that had a net positive effect for the Black community. Not one. Now, if you guys come up with some, more power to you. But I couldn't come up with one. They've been around since 1832, right? So, but what did come off the top of my head was the welfare state, fatherless homes, mass incarceration. More Blacks have been aborted in, I forgot how many years it was, like a decade or something, than been born. That's insane. Like, that's just insane. Then I said, okay, well, to be fair, what has Trump done? So just off the top of my head, what has Trump done? Well, you got empowerment zones, criminal justice reform, money to HSBCs, historically Black colleges, appointed openly gay ambassadors, drug policies are falling. What else? Yeah, it pulled us out of endless wars Recently, you had the Abraham Accords bringing peace to the Middle East. You had Operation Legend, and recently, more recently, you have the Platinum Plan. So I'm like, dang, what's? So I started making the connection between the Democratic Party and legacy media when I started hearing the term narrative of victimization. Then everything started to make sense. You know, I started to notice, who is this? I started to notice how legacy media would alter stories, change facts, and they would downplay certain stories. And the effect of this had a direct benefit to the Democrats, never the Republicans. So basically, they were scaring people to vote left. Like the legacy media is not like scaring you to vote left. I'm talking news, local, national, movies, is in gaming, everywhere. It's unbelievable at times. So what's going on? That's what I'm thinking. Like, what's going on? And then I'm like, well, why? I asked my friends, why are you voting for Biden? Well, Trump's a racist. That's not like answering my question. And like in most recent debate, Trump still refuses to denounce white supremacy. It's like, dude, don't you have Google? Like, how many times does he have to do this? Like, how many times does he have to denounce white supremacy? Like, at this point, I'm like, why am I defending this guy? Like, just tell us the truth. Like, you can't let a candidate accuse somebody of doing something, sit by passively, which infers that you are agreeing with this person. That's not right. Come on, man, that ain't right. So basically, they're lying, in my opinion. I mean, y'all prove me wrong, right? Prove me wrong. So I concluded that anything that goes against Black victimization gets buried. Anything that can be spun into Black victimization gets elevated to scare you into voting for Democrats. Democrats won't win on policy because their policy is a protection racket. Vote for Joe Biden. He'll protect you from the racist Trump. Well, if Trump's not a racist, then you have no policy. So they got to invent all this stuff about him being a racist, a misogynist. Come on, man. Let's hope we're better than this. But anyway, this all comes down to there was an answer to the question of why I felt the way I felt in Japan and why I feel the way I feel in America. I felt the way I felt in Japan because no one was telling me I was a victim in Japan. No one was telling me that. No one was telling other Japanese people that either. Everything about me was positive. I mean, I walk into, now this is, I had an exceptional experience. I understand that. I wasn't in Tokyo where Black people were kind of common. I was out in the countryside. And I would, look, Shikoku Island, sometimes I'll walk into a restaurant and people will buy me, dinner, beer, just come up and talk to me. I would sign autographs. But the point is, everything about my identity in Japan was positive. And then I come home to America and everything about my identity is negative. In Japan, I wasn't a victim and I wasn't a threat. But in America, the Dems say I'm a victim and the media say I'm a victim and a threat. So this narrative of victimization has been reinforced in the media for as long as I can remember. And these gray hairs should tell you I've been around a little while. It's always been there. Prove me wrong. So I've walked away from the Democrats, and I hope you do too. I always hope that one day I'll be able to say my best days in America were better than my best days in Japan. And with that, I want to say God bless. Make sure you vote, but be an informed voter. Hope to see you soon.